Men and women of the United States Army Corps of Engineers serve in both a branch of the Army and a major Army command. Our military and civilian engineers, scientists, and other specialists work hand in hand as leaders in engineering and environmental matters. Our diverse workforce of biologists, engineers, geologists, hydrologists, natural resource managers, and other professionals meets the demands of changing times and requirements as a vital part of America's Army. Our mission is to provide quality, responsive engineering service to the nation. We plan, design, build, and operate water resources and other civil works projects. We design and manage the construction of military facilities for the Army and Air Force. And we provide design and construction management support for other defense and federal agencies. Today, as always, we stand ready, engineers, scientists, real estate specialists, and administrators alike, to meet national security, emergency, and other national requirements. The Corps carries on a proud heritage that began in 1775, when the Continental Congress authorized the first chief engineer, whose first task was to build fortifications near Boston at Bunker Hill. Engineers conducted reconnaissance, prepared detailed maps for commanders, and planned and helped execute siege operations during the Revolutionary War. After the colonies won their independence, the need for a national engineering capability was recognized and then confirmed in 1802 when Congress provided for a Corps of Engineers to be stationed at West Point and constitute the nation's first military academy. The United States Military Academy holds the distinction of being the nation's first engineering school and was under the direction of the Corps of Engineers until 1866. With the founding of West Point, the Corps began a tradition of military and civil works missions that continues to this day. 19th century America called on the Corps to build coastal fortifications and improve harbors, survey roads and canals, explore and map the western frontier, eliminate navigation hazards on the Mississippi, Ohio, and other rivers, preserve and protect natural resources, such as Yellowstone National Park, construct buildings and monuments in the nation's capital, and provide water for the District of Columbia and nearby areas. Army engineers also distinguished themselves in the War of 1812, Mexican War, and Civil War. The Corps was developing rivers and harbors for waterborne commerce long before the start of the 20th century, and began a regulatory program to protect navigable waterways in the 1890s. The President called upon Army engineer officers to take over supervision of the Panama Canal construction in the early 1900s. The project was completed in 1914. During World War I, the Corps built troop billets, as well as port, road, and rail facilities needed to bring essential war materials to the front. Devastating floods in the Mississippi River Valley prompted Congress to direct the Corps in 1917 to begin flood control measures to protect life and property. And in 1936, to extend flood control responsibilities across the entire nation. During World War II, the Corps redirected its efforts to winning the war by assuming the responsibility for constructing all military facilities, training installations, ports, airfields, roads, and bridges, including the Alaska Highway. The Corps also designed and built the Manhattan Project facilities in support of the development of the atomic bomb. By war's end, the Corps' focus returned to the water resources projects that had been postponed during the war effort. The Civil Works mission continued to evolve, and over time, Congress has added hydroelectric power generation, water supply, recreation, and environmental protection as mission areas. The military construction program continued throughout the decades of conflict during the Cold War, when the Corps' work for the Army and Air Force complemented and increased the combat effectiveness of U.S. forces. The efforts ranged from the construction of missile launching facilities to early warning systems in other countries. The Corps took on other nation-building programs during the post-World War II years that began with economic recovery in Greece and continued through the 1950s in other European, North African, and Asian nations. Another significant effort was the $14 billion reimbursable program of building military and public services infrastructure in Saudi Arabia. Within the United States, the Corps also built bulk mail and other delivery facilities for the Postal Service, and NASA facilities at Cape Canaveral, Houston, Mississippi, and elsewhere. The Army's Corps of Engineers works under the direction of the Secretary of the Army and the Army Chief of Staff. The Secretary is supported by 5 Assistant Secretaries. The Corps works most closely with the Assistant Secretary for Civil Works, plus the Assistant Secretary for Installations, Logistics, and Environment, and the Assistant Secretary for Research, Development, and Acquisition. The Chief of Engineers has separate and distinct command and staff responsibilities. As a staff officer, the Chief advises the Army on engineering matters and serves as the Army's topographer and the proponent for real estate and other related engineering programs. The Chief is directly involved in engineer support to the Army, including 2 components of the Army engineer team assigned to other commands. The first are the engineer soldiers and troop units who prepare each day to defend the nation as a vital component of the combined arms team. Engineer troops report directly to the command where they are assigned. The second are the directors of engineering and housing and of public works who operate and maintain Army installations and report directly to installation commanders. As commander of the Corps of Engineers, the Chief leads a major Army command, the world's largest public engineering, design, and construction management agency. The Corps is organized geographically into division and subordinate districts throughout the world with civilian and military members. The private sector is an essential element of the Corps' team. The Corps employs private architectural, engineering, and construction firms for most design and all construction work. The partnership between the Corps and the private sector represents an immediate force multiplier of several 100,000 architects, engineers, and builders, and is a major contributor to preserving peace and improving the quality of life. Field operating activities include the Center for Public Works, which helps the Army improve the facilities, housing, and infrastructure that are vital to morale, training, and readiness. The Corps has 4 research and development centers, which are unique national assets. The Army Topographic Engineering Center develops mapping, terrain analysis, and image processing systems and techniques. The Construction Engineering Research Laboratory supports the Army's effort to design, construct, operate, and maintain its infrastructure, and ensure environmental quality through compliance and conservation technologies. The Cold Regions Research and Engineering Laboratory devises methods for living, working, and fighting in the world's cold regions and develops ways of improving winter navigation. The Waterways Experiment Station is a 6-laboratory complex that specializes in hydraulics, structures, and geotechnical, environmental, and coastal engineering, as well as information technology. The Corps' programs are directed by the President and Congress. And this is the annual funding program. It consists of direct and reimbursable funding for the military program and the Civil Works program, which the Congress funds through public works, not military appropriations. Non-federal sponsors share in the costs of civil works projects. The funding includes research and development for both the military and civil programs, and reimbursements from other federal agencies. Although military appropriations are declining and civil works appropriations are stable, growth areas include the environmental restoration, base realignment and closure, and homeowners assistance programs. Today, the Corps contributes to the defense mission and the Army vision by building communities of excellence from which Army power can be projected worldwide. This work includes ranges and other training facilities, barracks, dining halls, hospitals, and workplaces, together with design, construction management, and real estate services for the Air Force, and quality of life facilities such as recreation centers, commissaries, and exchanges. Also, since sustaining the environment is essential to securing the nation, the Corps promotes stewardship of natural resources at military reservations. The Corps has a steadily growing environmental restoration program at Army and Air Force installations, as well as formally used defense sites, and has developed land use inventory and management systems to balance training and environmental needs. Today, the Corps manages a comprehensive water resources program in cooperation with other federal and state agencies and local sponsors. Commercial navigation and flood control are the traditional missions in the Corps' water resources program. The navigation program includes all of the nation's deep draft harbors, which are a vital link to seaborne commerce and handle much of the nation's international trade each year, as well as hundreds of smaller harbors that serve a variety of recreational and commercial purposes. The Corps has also built an intracoastal and inland network of 12,000 miles of commercial navigation channels and over 200 locks and dams for navigation. Over 2.1 billion tons of commerce are moved on these waterways annually. Maintaining this system involves the placement of 300 million cubic yards of dredged material each year. Much of this material is put to beneficial uses, such as preserving wetlands, protecting shorelines, increasing flood protection, and providing nesting habitat for migratory birds. During the past decade, the nation's $20 billion investment in flood control has prevented over $168 billion in flood damages for a return of over $8 in flood damage reduction for every dollar that has been invested. The Corps operates 368 reservoirs for flood control, produces 1/4 of the nation's hydropower, and serves as custodian of 11.7 million acres of land and water, which represent 1/2 of the Army's and 1/3 of DoD's total land holdings. The Corps also manages over 4,300 recreation areas at 463 lakes that attract over 400 million visits each year, placing more of the American people in more direct contact with the Corps than with any other Army or defense organization. The Corps' permit or regulatory program, established in the 19th century to protect navigation, was expanded in the 1970s to regulate the deposit of dredge and fill materials into the nation's waters and wetlands. Today, through an extensive program of public involvement, the Corps implements the principal regulatory statutes that protect the nation's wetlands and other aquatic resources. The Corps issues about 8,000 individual permits each year and evaluates and authorizes over 75,000 other activities through national and regional permits. For the 15,000 acres of wetlands that are affected annually, the Corps requires that 25,000 acres be restored or created as mitigation. The Corps responds directly to natural disasters and other emergencies as the nation's primary engineering agency through its own authorities and in support of the Federal Emergency Management Agency and Department of Defense. The Corps also does reimbursable work for others, such as monitoring wastewater treatment plant construction and public housing modernization, cleaning up toxic and hazardous wastes for EPA and the Department of Energy, and nation assistance and other security efforts around the world for the state and defense departments. We are taking actions to meet future challenges. We have placed environmental values on an equal footing with economic and engineering concerns in support of environmentally sustainable development. We have a diverse team and are building flexibility into our organizational structure so that we're ready to meet the demands of changing times and missions, and to focus our resources on wartime and other national emergencies. We have established a project management system that emphasizes project delivery through improved communications and accountability, yielding efficiencies and economies for the Corps' partners and customers. We have pioneered alternative dispute resolution and partnering techniques. We've initiated cost-shared research and development to improve the productivity of the U.S. construction industry, and research to preserve and restore the value of wetlands and other water and natural resources. There is a vigorous commitment on the part of each member of our team to integrity, quality, professionalism, and caring. We see ourselves as a vital part of America's Army, proud of our past, building for the future, providing quality, responsive engineering services to support the nation in peace and war.